Welcome back to the Typical Sportsman podcast. I've got a great one for you. Mr. Remi Warren, one of my favorite dudes in the industry, nice as can be. What I love most about Remi is he's just a wealth of knowledge and he is not afraid to share it. Information is free to give and it's beneficial to somebody. So I like that Remi is all for sharing tips and tricks. And that is what we are here to talk about. We talk about tags. We talk about, tips on how to get better tags, on where he uses his points to draw tags. So if you're new to the tag game, Remi gives you some great advice. Or if you've been doing it for a while, Remi shares some things that he does as far as drawing tags. We talk about the advancements in technology and how to use that technology. But we also talk about the dangers of technology. And then if you're an elk hunter, you're going to want to stay tuned because me and Remi share a lot of tips, tricks, and stories about elk hunting. Guys, this episode is brought to you by my friends over at 2O. Speaking of elk hunting, that was the first hunt where I really pushed the 2O gear about as hard as I could ever push it. I put it through everything. We had days of straight downpours. We had hot days. We had cold days. We busted through brush. We sat in glass for hours. And the 2O system simply works. Doesn't hurt that it's in an incredibly sexy camo. So guys, I would highly encourage you to go check out 2O. They've got an incredible line of merino wool. They've got probably, in my opinion, the best rain gear I've ever used, which I know sounds like a small thing, but when you're stuck for 2 days in rain, you're going to want good rain gear. Guys, go check out 2O, but let's dive in with Remi and talk tags, technology, and elk hunting tips.
For the true sportsman, it's more than a pastime. It's a way of life. Embrace the lifestyle of hunting, fishing, and the thrill of the wild. Live the life. Be typical.
Guys, there are a lot of names that you can trust in the archery world. However, not many stick out as much as the name Lancaster Archery. Guys, if you've been around archery or bow hunting at all, you've probably heard of Lancaster. Why? That's because they're experts, and that's because they're your one-stop shop for all things archery. I've never needed something and not found it at Lancaster. I've also been able to find reviews and tips using the product that I needed that Lancaster had. Guys, Lancaster is phenomenal. They are experts in the trade. They know the equipment because they use the equipment. And you can pretty much get anything you've ever needed archery related at lancasterarchery.com. You can also learn about the products you need on their YouTubes, in their videos, on their social media. You can also get tips about how to use the products. Guys, Lancaster is a phenomenal one-stop shop. And here's what I'll tell you. Sometimes you gotta be mindful of who you're taking information from. You don't have to worry about it at all when it comes to Lancaster. I put full faith in the guys over at Lancaster. They know the products. They sell the products. They give you advice on the products. They give you support on the products. You can call and ask them anything. They'll get you lined out. They'll sell it to you, and then they'll support you even after you buy it and you need help figuring it out. Guys, go check out lancasterarchery.com for everything you need archery related. Remi Warren, how the heck are you, man?
Yeah, pretty good.
Staying busy, getting ready for your spring hunts now?
Yeah, just kind of prepping and planning, and of course a little bit of application season. So just kind of figuring out what I'm going to do for this coming fall, and have a few spring hunts planned as well. So
what do you got planned? What do you got teed up?
Well, I mean, I'll be doing some spring bear hunting. And then I'm going to do a little bit of axis deer hunting in Hawaii. And then I'm going to go to Spain and do a ibex hunt this year. So
very cool, man.
As well. Yeah. Pretty full little docket this time of year in the air quotes off season.
Now, when you do the Hawaii thing, you take the wife and kids so they can hit the beach and you go hunt, or what?
On this one, I am. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. A little combo action. So
we actually have,
all get away.
We were just talking about the convention coming up April 9th through the 12th, and we have an Axis Hawaii hunt on the auction. And I told my wife, I'm like, I'm definitely going to be playing my cards on this hunt. And she was like, well, I'm going with you. Like, I'm going to go to Hawaii if you go. And I'm like, fair enough.
Yeah, it's fun because you can hunt and you can still. Well, it's kind of hard though too because it's hard to kind of balance the hunt and other things sometimes. Like it's always more productive to hunt when you're just hunting, but to throw both in there is always good too. Like get a little mix of both.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna get this. I'm gonna get this out of the way because I got a question I want to ask you.
Yeah.
I was recently doing a podcast with Cameron Robson, and I'm sure you've seen him on social media. He does the funny, like, what does your camo say about you, or what does your ammo say about you? And so I had him on the podcast, and we said, what the podcast you listen to says about you. And I said, if you listen to the Remi Warren podcast, that just means you want to kill stuff. Like, Remi is giving you top level information. And he was like, yeah, the guy just shares his secret sauce like all the time. And I went into talking about how I appreciate that about you, maybe more than anybody else in the industry, that you don't hold any information. You're like, man, I'll tell you anything you want to know. I'll give you my tips and tricks and what I've learned over the years. And I just really appreciate that. So when it comes to tags, what's your tips on playing the tag game, man?
Yeah, I mean, for the tag thing, the hard part is you gotta find something that maybe other people aren't looking at. The thing about when it comes to like applying for tags is everybody's at a different level, and like for Western big game hunting, the tag draw is definitely a game. There is some gamemanship to it. There's some planning and some forethought as well. Like if you're just starting out, you aren't going to draw the tag that takes the most amount of points, and that's just how it's going to be. But you have to like figure out, okay, well, where am I in this like point level? How long have I been doing it? And then look for those little ways to maybe get into a tag sooner. One of the things that I always suggest is like if people have more tags, maybe going for a unit that takes a few less points, and then try to hunt it more often. That's kind of my general strategy. But then there's certain states where I just kind of hold points and just, kind of shoot for the moon. It like the biggest thing though is, one of the things that I look at a lot too is like looking at the trends of, okay, where's somewhere that's popular right now, and where are places that maybe used to be popular, but aren't, maybe getting overlooked, or places that might be potentially getting overlooked. And it all depends on the kind of hunt you want as well. So one of the things that I like to do is I like hunts that, well, maybe it's got lower success because in lower deer densities, but I'm going to run into fewer hunters. So you can kind of choose your hunt that way as well, where it's like I choose maybe a tougher hunt and have less opportunity to run into people and more opportunity to get on that hunt more often. And over the years, that's kind of benefited me as well.
Now, it's so hard for East Coast guys to understand like the draw game. And, I grew up in Arkansas. You didn't have to draw for anything. If you wanted to hunt, you went and bought a tag. And, Arkansas, when I grew up, dude, it was $25 for your sportsman's license is what it was called. And that's your turkey tags, your deer tags, your fishing license, everything. And so many people, I do think that I do. And it happened, I don't know, maybe you can shed some light on this. I would say 15 years ago, there was this big move for, I want to go hunt out West. Everybody wanted to start going and hunting out West. And so a lot more people started paying attention to like, well, I got to start putting in for tags. So for the guys who are just now starting, like they have no idea about the tag system, like where would you tell them they should start?
There's a lot of information out there now, and that's the reason that it's become in some ways more popular. Like whether it's podcast information, there's multiple like large companies that are dedicated to helping people draw tags. There's like, Hunt and Fool, Epic Outdoors, Go Hunt. Even Onyx has like draw tag stats and things like that. Like there's so much information out there. That's part of the reason why it's, like the barrier to entry is easier, because like when I started guiding in Montana and like, I don't know, probably over 20 years ago. Like most the people that wanted to go hunt elk out West, there was no information on how to do it yourself. Like there was no Onyx maps where you could even figure out, am I even somewhere that I can legally hunt? Like none of that existed. And so the easiest way to do it was with an outfitter, and that cost more money. So like with the advancement of technology and information, there's just so many more options for people to kind of figure it out on their own, which didn't exist, even 50, maybe a lot of it 10 years ago, 15 years ago wasn't as prevalent. So with that, definitely a increase in their, people's kind of, ability to get in on those hunts. But there's plenty of resources out there on like what to look for. Like the first thing is like, I just say like narrow down a state, like, and then start focusing on what are the rules and application things for that state. It's like, well, where's the best place to go? Honestly, probably whatever's closest, wherever you can get to the easiest, to be honest. I mean, like a lot of people drive to one spot they've like driven 12 hours through like great elk country that they probably could have hunted sooner. Like, I think places that are easier to get to are more beneficial because it might lend itself to allowing you to scout it or get into that unit more often. Like if you got a tag and you can get there once before you even show up, that's hugely beneficial than going somewhere and chasing some place that everybody thinks is good. I hunt a lot of places that are like technically garbage hunts and do great. And the reason is because I know the area, and other people will go in there and they'll be like, that was the worst elk hunt I've ever had. I'm like, yeah, that's right. It will be like that because you have no knowledge on it. So having a little bit of foreknowledge makes a big difference on some hunts. So if you can find like somewhere that you could get into maybe multiple times, that's always, it's like, I would rather hunt one elk unit 5 times than, like a little bit better elk unit once every 5 years, or something, or once, like you're just going to have better success and better opportunity that way. So finding those that you might be able to get into sooner makes a big difference. Yeah.
Now, what do you think about Colorado going to a draw for out of states?
Yeah, I mean, the draw for archery, like that was a big switch because there used to be kind of unlimited over-the-counter licenses. I mean, for the first part now, it's going to be, I don't know if it'll be much different. Maybe it will. Maybe it'll like cause more demand, but they kind of limited it to what has been traditionally sold. The one thing that kind of messes with people it's like, if you're just getting going and you don't have any points, it's great for you. For guys that maybe have 10, 12 points saved up in Colorado that used to like to hunt the over-the-counter units, it hurts them because in order to draw that, potentially they would have to burn their points to draw that. Potentially not. They could draw it on a second choice as well, and it wouldn't utilize their points because maybe it'll be underserved. Like as long as more people don't apply in that first draw, then they could probably still get a tag, and maybe still gain points. But for people just starting out, maybe in the next 2 to 3 years, it probably could be good for those guys because it is putting a cap on the amount of people that'll be in there. So from year to year, it might not see as many swings in the amount of tags or like people going after it. And then they can kind of utilize a low point level or no point level to continue to get into those hunts. And so it might like displace a little bit of the hunting pressure in a way, which I mean, isn't bad.
Yeah. Now, so when a state makes a change like this, Colorado made the change. I think this is the first year that like Alaska, non-residents can only kill 1 blacktail instead of 3. When a state makes a change like that, how long do you think it takes? I mean, how long do you think until people notice a difference in the hunting in Colorado, if that makes sense?
I mean, in that particular, on those over-the-counter archery hunts, I'm not sure, I don't know, like, because they could have the same kind of number of participation in those. The one thing that is kind of a catch-22 is like, and I've noticed this in Idaho where they change things like, because there's a lot of non-resident pressure in a certain area. So the way that they changed it was, you have to like get online on a certain day. Well, that certain day is like early in the year. And this kind of thing could potentially happen with Colorado as well, where maybe the over-the-counter tag was a way that people tried for like a vast majority of hunters out west apply multiple states. And then if they don't get something, they might go to Colorado as like, the over-the-counter option. Well, once you've taken that option off the table and have a set deadline for applying, people are going to apply, and then that's going to be their hunt, and they're going to plan it. And then they're like, that's my hunt. That's the one that I got. Now I'm going to go on it. And this happens. I think that this has happened in Idaho, where they set that like tag purchase so early that people are buying their tags. Now that's their hunt, and that's the one that they're committing to. Whereas before, there was always like, you could during the season pick up there's like leftover tags. Now those tags sell out immediately. So the number of hunters obtaining tags is like, the demand is higher. All of them are being taken. And then all of those people are like, that's their planned hunt. So you're getting more people kind of in the field, and hunting longer for longer durations. Like, I think it in my opinion, had like an opposite effect. Because like just prior to changing that, there was always leftover tags that actually even residents could pick up as a second tag. They just pay the non-resident price, or even like a same non-resident could purchase it as a second tag. So you kind of went from like, now you have non-residents buying those tags and like making the trip for that specific hunt, because it's not an afterthought anymore. It's a primary thought, which could happen in Colorado as well. As like, they've set the number. And now it could be a primary thought of like, I'm applying for that, what used to be the over-the-counter tag for the whatever there is, 1,500 tags per unit, something. They're all different. But and then like, because there's a set deadline for that. If that deadline was pushed later, I think that they would actually decrease the amount of participation in it. But I think by where the deadline falls within the tag draws of other states, I think it'll probably like, you can almost guarantee that those are going to be the numbers going forward.
Right. Now, do you think, and I don't mean to offend anybody in this, but do you think that by making it a draw, do you think that you eliminate, I don't want to say this without offending anybody, because I know a lot of people who just drive to Colorado and, stomp around the mountain and try to find elk. But do you think it limits it to more of the serious hunters who are willing to know the deadlines, put in for the tags? Does that make sense? I don't want to say if you just drive to Colorado and try to kill one, you're not a serious hunter. That's not what I'm saying. But to more of the guys who are planned out, methodical, making their preparations early, do you think you'll see a change in kind of and again, I don't want to say quality of hunter, but I think you know what I'm asking.
Yeah. I don't really think so. I just think that like, because that was the system, you could just show up and get your tag, that people would. But I still think that most of those people kind of like had some planning. And like I say, maybe they'd have tried to apply in other places and then go, oh, well, I didn't get anything. I'll go to Colorado this year, like as a backup plan. But I still think like, I think it's going to kind of be, I think it's just kind of equal across the board. Like, people now know. There might be a group of people that were used to doing it and didn't realize that things changed, and like, oh crap, I can't go this year. Got to figure this out for next year.
Yeah.
But I think like for the most part, it's kind of this, essentially kind of the same thing.
Now, what, if you had to pick one state, what state do you think offers the best elk hunting opportunities?
Like opportunities as far as like large elk, or as far as like opportunities for tags. I mean, Colorado still has the most elk tags, so like that's the most opportunity. They do have the most elk. Like there's a reason that it's like the only state that could actually do over the counter unlimited archery tags. Because like they have the elk that could support that.
Do you know off the top of your head which state has the best success rates?
I don't know, not particularly.
But see, that's what's crazy to me is Colorado archery over the counter has a really low success rate, but they're selling so many tags that there's still so many elk being killed.
Yeah.
And that's what, people are always like, well, the success rate's only this. And I'm like, but you got to understand how many people are going to Colorado to hunt elk every year. Like, there's still a large number of elk being killed. Now, do you think with the advancements in technology and with the influx of information being shared and, people just we live in a information driven world now, and people can learn how to elk hunt on their phone. They can learn how to call, and they can learn all these tactics from listening to you. Do you think because of that, we've seen a super spike in the success rate, and now, Colorado has to change it because, well, we're having a lot more elk killed because people are just more informed. They're better hunters. They know where to go more now.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think like equipment too, like we have so many tools at our disposal. I mean, I hate to say it, but like archery hunting has become a lot easier than, and I know there will be people that disagree, like it still can be difficult, but like from when I started bow hunting to now, it is way easier for the average person to be successful. And that's just a fact. Like success rates are way higher. And like you think about equipment, like bows shoot, so like you can take a new bow off the shelf and have zero experience and probably shoot, like if you could just travel back in time with that new bow and like find the top archer in 1980, you like a person that had just learned to shoot that day would outshoot that person, I would believe. Yeah. Like the equipment's that much better in my opinion. I mean, yeah, it just is like the technology of, having maps on your phone, being able to like know where you're at, like is a big portion. To be able to e-scout, to be able to like have all this information at your fingertips. Laser rangefinders, like, I mean, there's just a lot of like more precision. You could shoot farther than you could in the past. So because of that, yeah, I do believe that like archery success has gone up considerably. It's still not like crazy high, but it's double or triple what it probably used to be in the past. And so because of that, yeah, I think that like they got to make some changes, because originally like archery seasons were pretty, like we could give people tags. It doesn't matter because success is so low, like hover around 4%, 5%. Now a lot of places like upwards of 20% or more. And so like they have to combat that by limiting the amount of hunters and things like that.
Now, and that's where, and you just said it perfectly. And that's what so many people can't possibly wrap their mind around. Like Pope and Young get such a bad rap for being the technology police but technology is getting out of hand. I mean, technology is getting to the point where it's like, all right, this is unfair to the animal. This gives the hunter an unfair advantage. I mean, just that, in the last couple of years, we've had holographic or thermal bow sights put out where you can shoot animals at night. Like there has to be somebody that says, okay, this has gone too far. Now, as far as the technology advancements that you've seen, because you've been in this game a long time, how long ago did you start guiding?
I think 22, 23 years ago, something like that.
So in the last 22 years, what have been the biggest advancements in technology where you saw, okay, success, this is going to make a big difference in the success of hunters?
I mean, for bow hunting, like rangefinders made a big difference. Because like I think when I started out, like they weren't very prevalent, or they were very basic and they're very expensive. Mm-hmm. That's maybe even longer than that. I think, but that, I mean, that's made a big difference because like a lot of people would miss a lot of stuff, just like bad estimation, range estimation. But some of these things too, like they do make it easier in a way, but they also make like you more lethal in a way too. But the rangefinders has been like a big one. I mean, just the advancements in bow technology, like the difference of carbon arrows versus aluminum arrows, the speeds of the bows, like the ease of shooting the bows, all that kind of stuff. Like pretty much every single piece of equipment, whatever it is, has made a big difference. And then like mapping software has like going from like paper maps that is just like figuring out where to go used to be very difficult. Like I mean, I would spend months like getting, like you'd have to go get maps from a Forest Service office, and then you'd have to go find like a stake in the ground, with a compass, and you're like, yeah, no, this is illegal access here. And it was very difficult. Now you can just like, and then it was like GPSs, and then you GPS with the map, and then it was like a map on your GPS, and then it's like on your phone. Like that does make a big difference because just knowing what's over the next ridge without having to hike there, or like kind of figure it out on a paper map, it makes it like it makes it a lot easier to kind of figure things out. So I think a little bit of everything is kind of, played to it.
I don't think people understand how much they rely on technology. I remember talking with Chuck Adams one time, and he was talking about, used to, you had to guess the range and guess the angle, and then, literally get out and do math to figure out how far to actually shoot that animal. And I'm like, dude, even if I just knew the distance, and even if I just knew the actual angle, like to stop and have to do the math and say, okay, well, if it's, a 40-degree slope and he's at 20, how far do I actually shoot? Like to even stop and take time to do that math. People don't understand. Now at the click of a button, your rangefinders are automatically compensating all that, and it says 18 yards. I mean, it's just, it's crazy. And I don't think people actually understand how much they rely on technology in the field.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. That's what, I even think about, after I started to get a rangefinder, I got my first rangefinder, and it was just, line of sight. And then I put this little inclometer on it so I could hold that. And then I had a cut chart on my wrist, or on my, I had this tape chart on I guess an arm guard kind of thing that was just so it was there. And so I could oh yeah, okay, I can make that, do the math right there, like a little math chart. Yeah, I mean, it used to just be guess the yardage and then aim load for downhill.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is hunters, I think, bow hunting's still difficult. I'm not going to take that away from anyone. It's still a challenge, even with the technology that we have. But I do think that the technology's made the overall success rate higher, for sure. Absolutely has.
100%.
There's no disputing that. And so because of that, they have to limit the tags, and it's kind of a weird situation too, that it puts you're trying to always balance opportunity with harvest stats and everything. Cause we first of all have to look after the resource. It's the science comes first, in my opinion. I think me personally, I think that it would be cool. And I've seen some states starting to implement this where, hey, maybe there's more restrictions on the, equipment used in some. So it's maybe it's a traditional only bow hunt. Maybe it's a traditional muzzleloader hunt, instead of, because now, even whether it's archery or not, the advancements of not just archery, but the advancements, people can shoot 500 yards with muzzleloaders now and 1,000 yards with rifle. It used to be a 300-yard shot was a really long shot with a rifle. Now it's an average shot with a muzzleloader, or could be. So, the advancements in those where they kind of limit the type of equipment you could use. Well, I don't want to be limited. Well, yeah, but it's giving you more opportunity to be able to get out there. So the average success rate is going to be lower, but the opportunity to obtain a tag is going to be greater. And so, or it might even displace hunting pressure of, putting people into kind of, in some ways, different categories of seasonality where they go, hey, okay, I don't want to hunt with a traditional bow. So it can kind of spread out the actual hunting pressure by having different seasons or different types of hunts, different places, which I think you're going to just see more and more as things get more popular.
And it's funny, you hear the old guard and they talk about, I heard one guy say this. He said, my rangefinder used to be my first arrow. If I shot way over his back, I'm oh, I shot way too far. I got to shoot another one and, lower it down this time. And again, I just think so many people don't understand how much they rely on it. And that's why, a few years ago, I made the journey to start shooting a recurve, and that was 100% of the reason why. I just wanted to take a step back and assess how much have you begun to rely on the technology of a bow? And not just to say make it difficult on myself, but just literally become a more well-rounded hunter. And in order to do that, I wanted to make it harder on myself. I wanted to have to get closer. I wanted it to take longer. I wanted to, and it's crazy when you make that change. If somebody goes from a rifle to a bow, they learn a whole lot more about the species, because all of a sudden they're not just shooting them at 300 yards. They have to watch them longer. They have to be in the field longer. And then you make the switch from a compound and, you're no longer shooting them at 60. Now you've got an extra hour to watch them and try to get in closer and see how they respond, see how they act. And so I think that you're just taking a step back from technology and learning the species itself when you limit the technology.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, in you like the harder it is, the more you learn, the better hunter you become in a lot
100%.
of ways. Maybe the hungrier of a hunter you becomes too, because like your success does lower, but at some point you kind of make up for it by kind of that paying attention to more details of little things that aren't going to get you busted and whatever. And then when you can do that, like, everything else maybe almost seems easier, depending on, what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. How often do you hunt with a recurve?
I mean, every year I go on a couple hunts with one, recurve or a longbow or something. It's mostly stuff that I just like, it's a personal hunt or whatever, not self-filming or not filming or something like that. Because there's like an added challenge that I think like hunting for me, like hunting with a recurve or a longbow is probably actually in some ways, like if I'm just by myself, easier than hunting and trying to film with like a compound bow. So it's like I choose my own heart in different ways, I guess. I mean, every year I go on multiple hunts with traditional archery equipment of some kind. Yeah.
Now,
it's fun.
What were all the, and I don't want to say all the challenges because it's a challenge in and of itself, but when you had to shoot with a mouth tab, what was the learning curve like with that?
I shot pretty, I mean, like I picked it up pretty quick, as far as just like shooting at the targets. I mean, within like by the end of the first day, I could probably shoot it out to like 30 yards or so. Then just continue to practice. There's a lot of things that I learned along the way of like, like your grip just had to be absolutely perfect at the draw. Cause like you couldn't adjust anything. Like you can see there's kind of a weird, like the way your head and everything had to be, like kind of the right release. Like if you opened your mouth, if you have to drop your bottom jaw, not just open your mouth. Cause if you open your mouth, like it'd kind of go wild. And then I also learned a lot about like, is like a little bit of form. Like if you're, shooting a regular bow and you like an animal walks and your feet are one way and you kind of turn your body, it puts torque on the bow, but like most of the time it's going to be within the zone that you need it to be. With the mouth tab, any weird torque would just, I mean, like exponentially move that arrow. So instead of maybe something normal bow where you move over and it'd be an inch or two, this is like a foot. So it like learning that kind of stuff. And that was stuff that I kind of actually learned in the field too, of like stuff that you maybe didn't even think about on the range practicing. But I mean, I built up the strength pretty quick. And that is just like getting, like some of it's very similar. It's just like shot a bow forever. It's just shooting a bow with a different draw method. The initial, like, it feels like you're going to rip all the teeth out of your mouth, kind of thing.
How much did you have to lower your draw weight?
I mean, before that I was shooting like 70 or 80 pounds, depending on my bow. And I went down to like 50 pounds. And then I think I worked up to like 55 or 60 pounds by the time I was done. The first time I did it, I actually like the first draws cycles I did was like with a Genesis bow, like set super low just to kind of get the form and everything. So you aren't worried about everything all at once. There's a lot of new, like the first few times you do it, like there's a lot of new and the new is like, it's just awkward at like anything. It's just like, I kind of related to like grabbing a ball and throwing it with your, like if you're right-handed, just throwing it left-handed, like it feels weird, but once you kind of get the hang of it, you can kind of figure it out. I think like the hardest thing at first I didn't think about was like letting down with it. That was kind of, like, awkward. Okay, I know how to shoot, but yeah, you're like coming back at your teeth with a knock of an arrow, and like, okay, is he just going to punch myself in the face? What happened?
Did you ever have a mouth tab break?
Yeah, like right in the beginning too. I had one. I think I have a video of it. I was just filming myself, like so I could, because like starting, I was like filming. I would set my camera up to see like my form and everything. Because when something's new, you kind of like can't get the nuanced details. So I would film, I'd put my phone in slow motion and see like, okay, how did I do that? What's it like? What was my head position? That kind of thing. Just like self-analysis. And I think I even had it was like filmed in slow motion and the mouth tab broke as I was drawing back. That was fun. Like very shocked look on my face, like what happened here? But I had a metal grommet on I started with a leather tab, and the metal grommet severed the D loop, and like peak draw weight. That was interesting. Yeah.
Oh, now did you have anybody that had any experience with this kind of teach you, or was this just straight up like, I'm going to figure out what to do here?
Yeah, no, a buddy of mine named Nolan Young, he grew up with cerebral palsy, and so he could only use one of his hands, and he'd been bow hunting forever. So I mean, I'd done like archery shoots with him in the past, and so when it happened, I called him because I was like, I don't even know where to start, and he got me all set up, and then I kind of tweaked some things based because he likes he would use like a leather mouth tab, and I ended up switching to like a more of a synthetic one that was a little bit lighter. Just, I don't know, it was easier for me, but he got me all set up on the first one, and helped me build that confidence and kind of taught me how to shoot it. So, and he's a great shot. So I was like, okay, this is like what might be potentially possible.
And you ended up killing some studs.
Yeah. I had a great season with the mouth tab, which, I mean, I got like, the one that I thought would be semi-impossible was like one of my first. I went to, I hunted some mouflon and axis deer in Hawaii with it. It was like my first trip. And actually killed a mouflon with it, which they can actually be very hard to get close to. And so that was kind of surprising. Very surprising. I don't know how I did that. And that was like my first trip. I'm like, wow, dang. It was like my best mouflon too, so it worked out. And the one that I thought I was like, this might be semi-impossible was like early season mule deer hunt in Nevada. And I ended up getting like I didn't self-film it, but I had somebody there filming, and I ended up getting like a good buck, which like I thought that was probably out of all the hunts, I was like, that one will be the most difficult. And ended up getting like a good buck, made a great stock, great shot. It worked out. It was awesome. And then kind of like kept the momentum going through the season. I ended up getting a bull elk on an over-the-counter tag, which pretty cool. I got I got a pronghorn, a couple caribou. And it was an awesome season.
That's so cool, man. The mule deer, I actually got a picture of it sent to me, and somebody's like, dude, check out this stud Remi just shot. And I'm like, yeah, he shot it with his mouth too. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, straight up shot it with his mouth tab. And they like almost couldn't even believe it.
Dude, that was pretty wild. I got pretty confident there toward the end. And I actually went antelope hunting with my longbow with a mouth tab on it and almost killed a buck. I crawled into like 8 yards on a bedded pronghorn, which would never happen. Like I would never even try to get that close. It's like 8 or 10 yards, something like that. And when he stood up, I shot, but it was this so close, like he jumped the string and just like skipped off his back, which, man, that was so close. Like it would have been pretty cool. It was fun. Like it was a good learning experience. And then, I think it kind of going into it, I was like, man, this is not going to be very successful, and ended up doing pretty well just by adjusting a few tactics. And really it just came down to like, it was like you say, like similar to hunting with like a recurve or whatever. It's like, okay, what was my once effective range with a bow? I now have to cut that distance in half. I tried to shoot everything at like 20 yards or less, or like 20 to 30 yards. I don't know if I shot anything over 30 yards. Like that was kind of my max with it. But because of it, where you might normally stop, you just continue to sneak and pay attention to more things and get as close as possible. And it worked out.
Well, to me, I think the biggest thing that came from it for the hunting community is just stop making excuses. Like if you want to find a way to do something, you'll find a way to do something. And so many people make so many excuses as to why they can't do this or why they can't, why this will never be obtainable for them. And I almost, it just gets so frustrating, man. Like when, even for certain hunts, like if somebody's like, how do you afford to go on an elk hunt every year? I'm like, dude, you smoke cigarettes. Like if you would stop smoking cigarettes, that would be enough money for you to go on an elk hunt. Like if you want something bad enough, you'll make sacrifices and figure out a way to do it. And I actually just recently met a guy. His name on Instagram is Making Tracks. And he is trying to complete the Super 10 in a wheelchair. And it's just insane to me. Like you hear people who make so many excuses for why they can't do something. And you're like, I mean, it's going to be hard. Yeah. But if you want it, you'll work at it and make it happen. And so many people would have said, oh, dude, I got to have shoulder surgery. I can't hunt this year. Well, no, you can. You might just have to have a little bit of grit about you, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like, I mean, for me, it was like, I wasn't going to sit out at a bow season. That's just not in my DNA. I was like, I'll figure out a way to bow hunt. And then to do it too. And then you like, man, I had one of my better seasons ever. I was like, so glad I didn't sit that out because it was just a phenomenal year. It could have also gone the other way too, but I still would have been out there hunting and having a great time and doing what I love. So, yeah.
And like you said, I mean, by limiting yourself and making it harder, had you had a horrible season, you would have learned a lot about the species and about how to get closer and about, the mannerisms of animals and what they're doing and when they're doing it. Like you still would have taken something from that season. Absolutely, and that's why it's just so frustrating when people are like, well, I can't do it this year, for whatever reason. It's just hard, to hear people say that.
Yeah, for sure.
And I mean, I'm guilty too. I mean, I've said it many times, like because of, for whatever reason, I can't make it happen. And I remember my son was born September 2nd. And so for the first 2 years of his life, I made the excuse of like, well, I can't go on an elk hunt, can't miss my son's birthday. And then I just realized, I'm like, why don't I just take him out for a killer, 2 days to do whatever he wants before I leave. And then, I can be gone and go on an elk hunt. And again, there's so many excuses. And if we make them, we would never hunt. You know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah. Yeah, I know. That's like, I think that's, whether it's new parents or, different things in life, you can find ways around things like, my wife and I, everyone was like, oh, well, your life is going to change. And I was like, yeah, it's going to change for sure. It's going to change. But what we do is the same as what we've always done, whether it's bring the kids along. Like I've been on a lot of hunts that I've got my kids in the backpack or whatever, and they are not the same as when I'm going out by myself. Like that hunt is absolutely different.
100%.
But like, it doesn't mean that it wasn't fun. It doesn't mean that I wasn't out there hunting. And we've been successful. My wife shot like, I've been on some pretty good stocks while I've got like the kids in 2 backpacks. We're like reading stories. I'll put the spotting scope up with I got like a mag view with my phone on there. It's a little TV and the kids watch mom sneak in, from a mile away or whatever. Right.
That's
like,
cool.
I'm like, you're on your own. Like whoever's the spotter isn't doing much hand signals or anything. We just kind of like watch as kids get to watch the TV of the stock. And it's like, they're super excited and it's a lot of fun, and I had actually shot a mule deer with my longbow this year with my kids, and they were just like, they loved it. My daughter thought it was the coolest thing ever. She carried her little toy bow around, and like just had so much fun, and I've been on a lot of hunts with them where we didn't, it's like bad weather. We're pretty much in the vehicle driving, but we're still out there, like, having fun doing stuff as a family.
Yeah. And there's a lot of opportunities. I mean, obviously the Hawaii thing is a higher end, more expensive opportunity, but it's like, that's a thing where I can take my family and have a good time, And, well, just last year I went on a bear hunt in Montana, and we were staying at Justin Spring's house. And so it was like, well, we have a house to stay at, it's not a remote backcountry hunt. And I had to travel a lot and be on the road a lot. And so I'm like, I want to take the family and the kids. And so, we would spend the day together and I would go out and hunt and I would take take my boy out with me. And, he just thought in his mind, he's like, dude, I'm on a bear hunt. Like, I'm looking for bears. It's the coolest thing ever. And, he's seeing moose tracks and he's thinking, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And creating those opportunities gets you in the field, and it doesn't limit your hunting opportunities, but you're also creating opportunities for your kids. And like, I remember like the next week at school, his teacher was like, he has not stopped talking about going on a bear hunt. Like, he thinks it was the coolest thing ever.
That's cool.
And so you're creating the next generation of hunters, and you don't have to just say, well, I got family, I can't go out and hunt. Take your family out and hunt with you,
For sure. Yeah. And for me too, like some of my favorite hunts every year are like doe hunts and cow elk hunts. Like, hey, we did a cow elk hunt or a doe hunt with the kids, because it's like, it's so low pressure. It's so just like whatever. And you still have a good time. You're still out hunting. Like, we do that all the time. And it's a lot of fun. Like, my wife and I, it's like, we'll go, what hunt? We always plan of like, what hunt are we going to go on with the family? And it's like, can we get a cow tag and low pressure, easier, good opportunity, and still be out hunting. And it's a lot of fun. So, even sometimes just changing that frame of reference of like what you're going after, what you're doing, and just getting out and still enjoying it is huge.
Yeah. And again, you are making such an impact in that kid's life. Like, they're learning things that kids their age have never seen or experienced. And I actually just did a couple months ago, an interest day at my kid's school. And so I brought in a bunch of deer heads, and I brought the one that my son was with me when I shot it, and he's 6. But when his class comes in and they're hearing all the stories and they see all the trophies, my son told every single kid in that room, we killed that deer. We killed that deer together. And I'm like, man, like, my son is so proud of that. My son is so like, he thinks in his mind, like, he's killed the biggest buck ever in existence. He didn't even shoot it, but he was with me, got to skin it, got to gut it. I mean, he's just learning things that other kids his age have no idea about. And it's something that's really cool when you create those opportunities to take your family out on a hunt with you.
No, for sure. Yeah, it's awesome. That's cool.
Who doesn't love a good gun? Who doesn't love a good gun shop? Just walk in, get up on the countertop stool, and share stories with the boys. Talk guns, talk calibers, talk recent hunts. It's a good time. Gun shops are a great place to go and hang out. However, there's a couple gun shops that do it better than others. And then there's one gun shop that really stands out. Powder and String Outfitters. Yeah, I'm a little biased because it's right here in the great town of Wellington, Kansas, right here in my hometown. However, I can tell you that anybody that walks into Powder and String is basically blown away, because Powder and String Outfitters takes you back to a time where downtown shops were experts in their trade, where a man's word was his bond. They got a creaky floor, they got rustic decor, and they've got a massive selection of guns and ammos. They're a full service gun shop. They've got an in-house hot bluing facility. They've got a full machine shop. They've got a custom legendary gun engraver. Literally, when I say legendary, Mr. Brian Strange, their hand engraver, is world class. They've got the engraver. They've got gunsmiths. They have everything that you could ever possibly dream of having in a gun shop. They're also a small town, hometown, family-owned shop where you can call and talk to the owner. Guys, they've taken that same feel, that same great gun shop feel, and made it available online. powderandstring.com. You can buy all your guns, all your ammo, all your shooting accessories right there online in the convenience of your own home. You can stand behind the people that you're supporting because the guys are phenomenal. And again, I am of the opinion that if I'm going to shop for guns and ammo, I don't want to do it at a big box store. I want to support somebody like the Powder and String staff. So guys, go check them out for all your guns, all your ammo, all your shooting accessories. They've got it. They are knowledgeable. You can call them. You can talk to somebody, figure out what you need, why you need it, how you need it. They'll take care of you. I actually just bought a new shotgun there. Bought a new A300, and the first shot out of that gun was a dead bird. That's what I'm talking about. And I got it based off their recommendation. Guys, they're phenomenal people. Somebody you can be proud of supporting. Go check them out, powderandstring.com. Back to the sharing the tips thing, because I did want to kind of dive into that. The best tip I've ever heard, you might not remember this. We were sitting at a convention one time, and you talked about peeing in order to get elk to come in. You know, like sound of the pee hitting the ground. And I remember thinking, like, I wonder if that works for whitetails. And so that season, I had this little basket 8 come in, and he'd already played around and, you know, been around the area and left, and I could still see him. And I'm like, I'm going to try this. And so I whipped it out and I peed. And sure enough, that deer whips his head around and comes right back in. And I'm like, holy cow, like, dang, Remi. And now I've told people, like, dude, I pee as much in my tree stand as I possibly can, because it never fails. Like, if I pee, the sound of that pee hitting the ground, other bucks in the area just hear an animal peeing and they come. So thanks, man. You have increased my my water intake because I want to pee more, and my success just from peeing.
Yeah, I think the tactic, like, and I still do this, like, if I'm calling and I can't get a bull to come in, like, oftentimes I'll just like start dumping my water on the ground, or like, if you got like a water bottle, like Nalgene hose thing, like port, because that sound of a bull urinate, like, in so many times, like elk hunting, I like to hunt thick stuff. So they have to be right there in order to like get a shot. So sometimes they're holed up 15, 20 yards away, but just too much stuff. And they will not go that rest of the way. So just that added sound of like water pouring on the ground makes them commit.
That's something that, and it's exactly what you just said. Like, people who have never hunted out west, like, they don't understand that. And I remember this last elk hunt I was on, I texted my wife from the inReach, and I'm like, had a bull screaming in my face at 14 yards. And she's like, so you're coming home? And I'm like, not even close. Like, I didn't even get a chance to shoot him. But people don't understand, like, you can have a bull 20 yards away and all you can see is antlers. I mean, and it's so hard for them to wrap their mind around, like, closing that distance and getting a shot opportunity. So with that being said, what's your number one tip for, like, you've got a bull hung up and you can't get him to, come off his cows or just commit to you or whatever? What's your tip for closing that distance?
I mean, well, it depends if there's like one or two people. If you got somebody else calling, like, the best tip is like that person pulls back and the other person moves forward. It's like elk hunting elk calling can be a lot more successful with two people. Like, there's a major added benefit. If you're by yourself, or even like maybe you're in a situation where you've got a bull, he's held up, like, I act pretty aggressive for the most part, like, but it depends on the time of year and how the elk are acting. Like, I like to bugle. I like to be aggressive with the bugling. I think like, but I think sometimes, like, to draw the bulls in, it's like kind of like we just talked about, those non-call sounds, like raking a tree works really well. The water on the ground thing can work in the right situations, like if they're close. Even just like I'll sometimes just breathe through the bugle tube and like, and like be quiet and like make those noises, like where I'll just kind of like crunch sticks and breathe heavy. The kind of things that like show dominance and like, oh, there is an elk there, kind of build that illusion and makes them kind of come check it out. And then another thing too that I'll throw out is like, cow calls can be pretty effective as well. Like, it depends on the bull and whatever, but, potentially utilizing like a combination of those things and maybe some cow calling can help bring a bull in too.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times people think, and yes, on the flip side of that, everybody thinks they have to just blow as loud as they can through their tube. Like, sometimes not calling is the best thing, because that bull starts to wonder, okay, why did he shut up? Like, what else got his attention to where he stopped calling to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or even just walking. Like there's so many times where if you just walk and move around, all of a sudden that bull rips off at you because he's trying to locate where you are. Not necessarily tell you where he is, but figure out, okay, I hear him walking, but where are they going? Like he's trying to keep track of you. So sometimes when you just shut up, it makes him so curious as like, okay, where'd they go? Like why did I lose the interest of this other bull? And then they come in, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so many dudes just think they got to just rip through their tube and get the bull to respond.
Yeah. Yeah. There is like a thing of, I think in most cases, like calling elk isn't necessarily a game of sound, but a game of proximity, like how close you can get. So like a lot of people like the bull never came in, and I'm like, well, you weren't even within his ballpark of him wanting to come in, like naturally, like it just wasn't, you weren't within that zone. So it's like,
he might've been two ridges over,
Yeah, exactly. Like for me, it's like calling and then moving in quiet, calling, moving in quiet, and getting as close as possible. Because even when you're within that range of like, he's so close, you're going to be a lot more effective to getting him to where you want him to be. And so like a lot of people like are too timid and like stay too far back thinking that he's going to cover a lot of distance, or like maybe even like the distance, maybe he seems closer than he actually is. And I think that that's like a reason that, people are like, oh, he held up. And it's like, yeah, he held up because you weren't even set up right. Like the setup is way more important than the calls you make, in my opinion.
So walk me through, like, and I know this is so situational based, but like, what's your ideal setup? Like if you can get into a bull's bedroom, what's your ideal setup?
Well, I mean, it depends like the time of day. Like first thing in the morning, like I'd say, and we're calling, I would say like I'm bugling, bull bugles. Okay, I know where he is, and then I'm going to get as close as possible. Like, so I want him to bugle enough to where I can figure out where he is, and then I'm just going to move in as close as possible. I try to get like, it depends on the terrain. Like if it's thick country, like I would try to get within 50 yards of him. If it's open country, you probably even need to be closer, to be honest, which is weird, but they won't go, like they're going to use their eyes. So I try to get to a spot where I could get where his like, vision isn't impaired, but or where his vision is impaired. Cause like if it's if he can see a couple 100 yards, he's just going to stand there and look for the other elk, and he's not going to see him, and he's just not going to come in. That's just how it is. For the most part, like you will get the occasional one that's like all wrapped up in like a lone bull. They'll come in, but like a bull that has cows not coming in. So a bull that has cows, like you have to really like chop that distance and be like, probably within under 100 yards for any kind of calling situation to really work. Under 80 yards, preferably 50 yards is great. And then you think like 50 yards, you're like, well, I could shoot him from there. Not in thick country. You can't, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Like that's why I like hunting that thicker country. Because you can, you have the opportunity to get closer. Depends how many cows are around. You have the opportunity to get closer, but you're moving kind of fast in these situations. So, like in the morning, I got a bull lighting off below me. Like I'm bombing off and trying to, half the time I'm like running to at least cut the distance to about that 200-300 yard range. Like I try to get there as fast as possible. Like oftentimes I am actually running, especially if it's an area where I'm not worried about bumping. Like it's like, okay, I hear these elk here. I mean, I got to get there while they're there, and I'm going to run as fast as possible to get within that 200-300 yards. Then I'm going to get him to light off again, and then I'm going to try to cut that in half. And then hopefully he responds one more time where I can kind of figure out where he is. And I might have to keep throwing out calls if they're moving around to kind of pinpoint him so I don't, get busted. But I'm continually trying to like move in quiet, cutting the distance, and then lighting off and like directly challenging him or throwing out the cow call or whatever my strategy is going to be for the situation.
Now, at what point, and this is something that I hear a lot of dudes argue about, like if you're on a hunt with a bunch of dudes, every single one of them have a different opinion. When is it that you try to be really quiet and sneak? Like, because, you hear a lot of guys and they're like, well, elk aren't quiet. So like, I'm just going to be loud and they're going to think it's an elk coming in. But there comes a point where you have to be quiet because if they're looking, they're going to, if they look that way, they'll see that you're not an elk. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So at what point do you go from the running to the sneaking?
I mean, when I'm within the range that I would spook them, it's situational, but, within that 100 yards, 150 yards, something like that, probably. I'm definitely paying attention as I'm moving. I'm trying to move as quiet as possible. If I'm doing like a lot of calling though, I actually am intentionally loud as far as like breaking sticks and stuff. If I'm making it sound like there's a bull over here screaming his head off, chasing 15 cows and there's no other sound, probably not realistic. So I try to add like realism sounds when I'm calling, but, when it comes to like moving in, like I always just move as fast and quiet as possible, like with the two combined. When I'm a long ways away though, I don't even think twice about it. Like,
that leads me to another great tip I heard you share. And I think this was on a podcast. You were talking about looking up when you're walking.
Oh yeah. That's probably,
and that's so many people, like they just stare straight at the ground because they're trying to be quiet and there's elk right in front of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You have to a lot of my success is because I see things before they see me. And it's because I'm paying like a high level of attention to what's going on. Like guys, most hunts that I see get blown by guys. It's like they just did a stupid move at the wrong time because they were looking the wrong way. They weren't looking up, they were looking down or whatever. Like they're focused on something that wasn't where they should be looking. So that blows more hunts than anything. Like that strategy of getting close only works if you don't blow them out first. So pay attention.
Now, as far as blowing elk out, and again, I know it's so situational. I'm just trying to give some good tips and tricks and information. As far as blowing an elk out, if an elk sees you and bolts, is there any chance that you try to get back on that bull, or do you just say, we've boogered him up, we've messed him up?
No, I immediately, I always have a call in my mouth when I'm elk hunting, because the faster you can hit that call, the more likely you are to be able to get that elk later. If they don't wind you, you're good for the most part. Like not always, but it depends on which elk you spook too. But yeah, I have that call in my mouth immediately and hit it. Like as soon as something like starts to go, like the second they leave, I just, or bugle or whatever. And that makes a big difference. Like the bull that I killed with my mouth tab, I popped up on the rise, blew him out, hit the bugle like within a second and shot him. Cause sometimes they don't know, like, oh, did I just get bumped by another bull? And he came right back. Like, oh, okay. He was dead run, probably ran out to, 50 yards and walked back another 20 yards. So
interesting.
He was like 20 yards away, ran out to 50, walked back to 30 or whatever,
Have you ever blown out? I don't even want to say big, because I know you've blown out big animals. Have you ever blown out one where you're like, dude, that was a once in a lifetime bull? Like that was it?
No, not that I can think of.
The reason I ask is because I was just talking with a guy, and I know like there's people that say this and you're like, okay, you blew out a big animal, whatever. But this guy has been a panel measurer for decades and, one of our past presidents, and he knows big animals. And he legitimately was like, I blew a world record. Like it was a potential world record. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can't even imagine that.
Yeah. I've had that happen with mule deer before, but, I missed like a giant that would have at the time would have been a world record mule deer. 100%.
Oh,
then
what happened?
Yeah. I shot over its back. It was pretty early. Like I was like 18, I think. And, maybe 19. I don't know. I just didn't like calculate the angle, and he jumped the string a bit too.
Because you didn't have a rangefinder, laser rangefinder.
Yeah. I did have a rangefinder, but there's no such thing as angle calculations, and it was like straight off a cliff, So it was just a crapshoot of like, that's after that is when I got that inclometer thing with the cut chart.
He's like, I got to figure out something.
Yeah,
here.
I was like, I got to figure something out. Because, and if he didn't duck, it would have been fine. But he jumped. It was a big deer.
Oh, that stinks. Now on
Never
elk
seen
hunts,
one like it since.
oh, where was it? Like what state?
Nevada. It was the same year, like the world record was at that time was shot. I mean, that was before there was a velvet category, but it was like, there was some giant deer running around that year. Yeah, there's some big bucks.
Oh.
Yeah, we ended up killing like a couple of the deer later in the season that were in the group with this buck, and like a mid-level, like one of the bucks that was not even close to this buck that was like standing next to this buck when I shot him was 198.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. It was like a not even like there's some, it was like that, I don't know. There used to be a calendar with like just giant deer. This is like I got into a group of absolute giant deer.
Calendar deer.
Yeah, calendar deer, man. But hey, I think about that all the time.
Jeez, dude. Now, I mean, you started guiding like 18, 19, didn't you?
Yeah.
So right out of high school, you're like, I want to be a guide.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah. 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 I was like, well, I just loved hunting. I want to be hunting every day. That was pretty much the only way I could figure to do it.
So there you go.
Yeah.
But I've also heard like guides say, I mean, I got into this because I love hunting. Now I never get to hunt. Like,
oh yeah. I mean, that's not the way that I see it. Like, it's like I get to hunt every day. Like whether I'm pulling the trigger or not. And then like every day off I would hunt as well. So I got plenty of hunting in.
Now are you still guiding at all?
I'm cutting back. So, just because like the time with family and everything. So, I still have an outfitting business, but, I'm kind of transitioning away from that a little bit. So I don't know. I think I'll kind of be done. I mean, I've been doing it for 23 years. I think it's long enough in some ways.
Now, where all does your outfit guide at?
I'm in Montana.
I thought you did like New Zealand stuff too.
Yeah, I stopped doing that a long time ago.
Okay.
With COVID and everything. I still go over there and hunt personally, but I haven't guided over there in a long time.
Very cool. So as far as out of country opportunities, what are some good things you found? Like, hey, this is super affordable. Like it's anybody could do this. It's a great hunt. Like, are there anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, well, a lot of the stuff in New Zealand's like that. As far as out of the country goes, it's probably the only place I can really think of, that allows a lot of that. There's other places that I've hunted. Australia, I've had some great hunting in Australia, but
I've heard Australia is really cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. Like there's phenomenal hunting there. Some cool stuff, some cool species.
And it's not crazy expensive, right?
No, it's not. I mean, like there's a lot of legwork that you'd have to do in some instances, like to figure out where to go and all that kind of stuff. Right. But, there's some great hunting over there for sure.
Really cool. Now, have you ever done Africa?
Yeah. I've hunted Africa.
Are you a fan of it or no? People either love it or hate it. It's fun.
Yeah, no, I like it. I haven't been in a long time. I actually worked over there for a little bit, when I was a lot younger, but, yeah, I mean, it's an awesome place. And I mean, there's cool opportunities. It's funny because, I haven't been in a long time, but I kind of think about going back because I was like, it would be fun to go do again and just get over there. And I kind of want to, my wife's never been. So I was like, oh, it'd be a fun trip to take her or even the family, something, when they're a little bit older. But yeah, it's cool, man. There's a lot of opportunity and like, the value of like you can hunt some cool stuff and like it's a very unique place. Like hunting in Africa is definitely something that I was like very high on my bucket list for a very long time. I mean, like I grew up with just like immersed in the world of like reading books like Death in the Long Grass and like all the like old whatever Roosevelt's African Safari and stuff like that. So I thought that was pretty cool. And so, yeah, there's some cool hunting over there. I've been thinking about it more and more lately of like some of the cool opportunities of things to hunt there. There's some really unique stuff.
If you were to go back, what would be top of your species list?
I don't know. It'd be cool to hunt a buffalo, I think, Cape buffalo or hippo. When I was working over there, we had like, there's this problem hippo that, we went to go get rid of. We had like permits and everything for it. And, I didn't actually shoot it, but I was like, it charged us. It was pretty cool. It was pretty exciting. We ended up not getting the hippo, but it was pretty cool. I thought like that's a random thing. Like I think people think they're so fast. Like it was like underwater, like you could see the wake coming at you, and it is just unbelievable how fast those things move. Like it was.
I don't
insane.
think I've ever heard anybody say being charged by a hippo was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, yeah, no, we like, yeah. So it was like, I mean, just how fast they are and like how aggressive it was wild. But yeah, it ended up leaving. Like it charged and we shot. Like we ended up shooting in the water. Like you can't really. I don't think you could hit them. I mean, we're trying to kill it, but didn't. It just like the shots in the water caused it to turn around. And yeah, it ended up leaving like that area. So I think we went back to the river or whatever is in like this little area where there's like some people and stuff, and it was like being aggressive to the people. So yeah, but it was like in depredating. It was like it was getting into like crops and stuff. You don't realize like how much damage. Like one hippo that's not supposed to be there. Like I think it just went up this little thing, got into this area where there's not normally hippos, and it was just like tearing apart crops and everything. And then, you know, getting after people that were going back and forth the water and whatever, like is menace. But yeah, I ended up getting out of there. But after that experience, I was like, dude, these things are actually pretty dang cool. I don't know. It's just kind of like a random.
So now you want to go kill one?
Yeah. I was like, I would go hunt a hippo. It was kind of cool.
My brother and sister-in-law, are doing some mission work in Africa, and they're going to be there for several years. And so like, you'll have to come visit. And he's working on translating the Bible and that type of stuff. But I'm like, well, if I come, like, I'm going to be hunting. Like,
yeah,
I'm not coming to Africa and not hunting, because really the airfare and the travel to Africa is the most expensive part of the hunt. So if I'm going to be there, I'm going to hunt.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some cool like plains game species too that, you know, just small stuff, and you know, I don't know, there's all kinds of cool stuff over there that are intriguing. Like I always like hunting the bush bucks or the kudu. Like they're probably the most fun to hunt out of everything. Like the kudu's like kind of like elk hunting in a way. Bush bucks kind of like, I don't know, they can be challenging. So 2 fun hunts.
Yeah, I'm excited to go try it. It's something that's never really been on my list until recently, and now it's like, man, it's so appealing to think, okay, I can go and travel over there and kill 7 animals, 9 animals, 10 animals. Like,
oh yeah.
Whereas like if you dedicate, 10 days to an elk hunt, you're maybe going to punch 1 tag. And then like, well, if I go to Africa, I can sting and kill 10 animals. Like,
yeah, there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of cool, like unique species too. Like that's the most fun part, is like everything's a little bit different, and like the way that they behave and everything. Like it's cool. It's a cool place.
Now, have you completed the Super Slam?
No, I haven't. I need, there's a couple things that I haven't hunted, or there's some that I have hunted and was unsuccessful, but, yeah, it's all the real expensive stuff that I have left.
Is that on your, like, is that a to-do list for you, or do you care to complete it?
I mean, in some way, like, yeah, I mean, like if I can plan a hunt or get on a hunt that's something that I haven't hunted before, I always try to like do that. So I don't know. I need a mountain caribou and a grizzly bear and a stone sheep and a.
You've never killed a grizzly?
I've killed a brown bear, but I've never hunted grizzlies. No. That
one kind of shocks me for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that. But yeah, so the stone sheep's going to be the difficult one. I don't know. I put in for every drawing where there's like a potential to win one. I have been on a stone sheep hunt, but I was unsuccessful. I didn't even see a legal ram. So it was tough.
Now, if you could, like, if someone were to call you, I'm sure it would be stone sheep, having heard you speak. But if someone was to call you and say, "Hey, Remi, we're going to send you on any hunt tomorrow. Money's no object. You're going."
Yeah.
What species would it be?
Sheep hunt. Yeah. It's like is in a weird way, not in a weird way, but like that's been since ever I can remember, like the species that I think is the coolest. Like I love sheep hunting, and yeah,
gorgeous.
So, oh yeah, like a dark caped stone sheep, like nothing cooler in my opinion, like on the planet. Like they're just the coolest animal. And it'd just be awesome to hunt. I mean, it was awesome to hunt. It'd be awesome to harvest one. So
yeah. Is that the only sheep you haven't shot?
Yeah.
Now your Dall sheep there, that's top 5, isn't it?
I think so. I don't know. Or I mean, it was for recording period. I can't remember, to be honest.
I think for some reason, I think it was top 5 all time. And that right there is just a gorgeous mount. If you're watching the video, whether it be on YouTube or Carbon or Wild TV, Remi's got a Dall sheep above him and just an absolute mega giant and just a gorgeous mount.
Yeah. It was awesome. Like such a cool hunt. And yeah, anytime you can take a sheep with a bow, that's a pretty good feat, in my opinion. Like those opportunities don't come around very often because sometimes it takes everything to even find a ram that, like, well, especially if it's like it's got to be full curl or a certain age, like you might not even see one, and then you got to get close enough with a bow and take it. Like it's pretty cool when it all comes together. I've been on, I don't know, my last two, like between I had a Dall sheep tag and a stone sheep tag, and I think I've probably put in like 30 days of going without seeing a legal ram. So it's rough.
Yeah,
dry spell, I guess.
Definitely sounds rough.
Yeah.
What has been like if you were to say this is my number one trophy, or I don't want to say trophy because sometimes the hunt in and of itself is more special than the animal, but what would you say your number one, like
if there's a
hunt
fire, what am I grabbing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably I like my best mule deer would be the thing that I grab. If there's a fire and everything was in one place and I can take one thing, I would take my big mule deer. I mean, it's just like for a couple of reasons. One, it is a good buck. And two, like, I just think that's probably, in my opinion, like a big mule deer buck with a bow is probably one of the hardest. I mean, like I said, the sheep hunting can be very hard, but like, I don't know, mule deer hunting, like for the amount of time people that go after it, the amount of times that you can do it, and then to find like a over 200-inch buck is so hard. I don't know. And then there's like a lot of like, just the story behind it too, for me, is like super cool. So I think like that would be what I would grab.
How long ago did you kill that?
2008, maybe a while ago. Yeah.
So hearing the way that you fantasize mule deer, is that your favorite species?
Man, it's so hard to pick a favorite. I don't know. I think it's like the one that frustrates me the most. I mean, I love elk hunting. Like elk hunting is so much fun. I like calling elk. Like I like hunting elk. I like taking people elk hunting. I love like the act of elk hunting. It's like the most fun. Mule deer like is the most, in my opinion, kind of like the most challenging. Like people will probably hate me for this. I love elk hunting. Don't get me wrong, but like to me, like elk hunting is like playing checkers, and like mule deer hunting is like playing chess. It's like I mean, elk hunting is pretty easy in my opinion, but but like mule deer hunting is like, and I'm talking about like targeting mature, like high country, high desert mule deer is so challenging that it's like they always seem to like no matter how much I mule deer hunt, like I'm always kind of tricked. Like they, in some way, like they do something, like it can be very challenging. Like half the struggle is just finding them, and they aren't in like a great state right now as far as like availability of mule deer, and like it's not great. Like there is a lot of good elk out there. There's a lot, like elk populations doing phenomenal. Mule deer is struggling, so it's like to get on a good mule deer hunt is pretty rare. And then to still make it all happen is even, is very difficult. So I don't know.
I think what you're saying is the guys that I elk hunt with just suck.
I don't know. No. I mean, elk can be very predictable is all I'm saying. Like,
yeah,
there's a formula to kill elk. And once you figure out that formula, you're going to do pretty well. Mule deer hunting, like the formula is hard.
Ever changing.
It's always changing. Like they aren't as predictable. It depends where you're at. Like if you're hunting like an area where they're hitting ag and they're like bedding in like open air, like, okay, like it's, you can find places where mule deer are very easy to kill. I'm not going to discredit that. But that's generally not the place that I'm hunting. So the way that I like to mule deer hunt, like the challenge of it and the type of deer that I hope to find is very hard. Mule deer are always like, they just like, no matter how much you do it, they kind of can always be a little bit of one step ahead, or you can struggle to find them or whatever. Whereas I think like, it's not like that with elk for the most part.
I don't think I've ever actually heard you speak about, the quality of animal that you're chasing or the idea of trophy hunting. So have you made it to the point like in your life where you're like, I mean, if it's not a dandy, I'm not shooting it. I mean, if it's not a giant buck, I'm not going to shoot it.
I actually used to be like that. And now it's more like, man, the opportunity never happens anymore. So it's hard to find. Like I used to pass up a lot of deer in a way. Like I think like for me, I kind of hunt to like, for just my, like whatever I think like whatever feels right for me. I don't put any like specific on it. Like it depends on the hunt. It depends on where I'm at. Depends on what I'm looking for. Of course, you always like strive for I like always look for the best and the biggest. Depends on where I have a tag. Like, I think back to hunts that I've taken in the past, and like, I mean, I've been, I'm not like trying to, whatever, like maybe in around 2000, early 2000s, like I think mule deer hunting was pretty dang good. And I used to pass up a lot of legitimate 180-inch bucks. Today, I would never pass up a 180-inch buck. You would just be like insane. Like those kind of deer, don't like, they aren't as prevalent as they used to be. In my opinion, like, still there's a lot of big deer that get taken every year, but like finding that like 165, like over 170 type buck now is very difficult. Like I've seen like sometimes I won't even see them in certain places or have seen them in a season. I used to pass those kind of deer up like all the time looking for something better. So, it just depends on like where I'm at, what I'm hunting. There's some areas where I know it's like this area, you're going to top out at 150 and like, okay, cool. I'm hunting for the best type of buck that I can in that particular hunt or particular area. And that's a challenge. And I have fun doing that,
Dude, I appreciate that so much that you're willing to say that, because with the commercialization of hunting and just the social media, and I mean, everybody seeing giant deer, giant bulls being killed, everybody thinks there's just a 180 hiding behind every tree. I mean, because that's the only post you see on social media is just giant mega deer being killed. And I think it's even worse in the whitetail world, because everybody thinks there's, a 160 I'm hunting for a 160. And I see people pass up, 140s or 150s. And I'm like, are you crazy? Like, you're insane, right? Unless you know for a fact, like unless you have daylighting pictures of a 180 on your place, like why are you passing this deer up? And so I've kind of coined this term, and I'm sure it's been said better, but I've just said, know your trophy, because there's times like if I'm on a hunt in particular areas, it's exactly like you said. I need to lower my expectations way down because I'm not going to kill a 180. I'm shooting for a 125. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And that's why like so many people go into a hunt and then they're disappointed because, well, I didn't see this 360 or this 350 or whatever. Well, you were never going to see it in that area. Your expectations are unrealistic for the area you're even hunting in. And so many people are, they want to kill a 180. You don't have a 180 on your farm. You're not going to kill a 180. It's not on your piece of ground. Like you have to know the largest, range of deer that are realistic in that area.
Yeah. I mean, for me, like I just value like the hunt itself so much that, you can have a really good hunt for a deer that like, whatever, you might pass up in another unit and be super excited to take it. And it was a challenge. And it was awesome for the conditions and everything. And like, very cool and a great hunt. And like, I've had a lot of great hunts like that. And for me too, like with elk, I've shot, I guess my best bull is like a 390 bull. And I was super excited, but like, I've been just as excited shooting like what you'd consider a raghorn 5 point on a general unit, like grinding it out after a week. And you're like, that's the kind of bull I was actually in here looking for,
Yeah, for sure.
Like that's a heck of an elk, like sweet. So, for me, it's more just like about the hunt and, but then it's like, hey, if I draw a really good tag, I try to just do like the hunt itself justice and like, what's the best for this particular hunt, what I've got going on, what the time of year and the strategy and the season and the area, and just have a good hunt. That's all I care about is like have a good hunt wherever and whatever it is.
100%, man. And that's what, like, if I go back home to Arkansas and, we're hunting public ground in the Ozark Mountains and I see 100-inch deer, I'm going to shoot it and I'm going to be ecstatic. And then people are going to think, why'd you shoot a 100-inch deer? Because that's a realistic giant trophy for that area. I mean, we killed a really good class of deer for that area, and doing it how we did it, like, this is phenomenal to me. And last year I got to share a camp with Chuck Adams. We went on a whitetail hunt in Oklahoma, and we're looking at all these trail cam pictures, and he said something about them not being big enough. And I'm like, Chuck, listen, dude, I know you're used to shooting world records, but these are tanks for Oklahoma. Like, these are stud bucks. And if you post this and say it was killed in Oklahoma, like, everybody's gonna be like, dude, that's a great deer for Oklahoma. And again, I think so many people, and it's just because of how, they watch the TV shows and they watch the YouTubes and they see them on social media, and they just think like everybody's killing a 180. And if I don't kill a 180, I'm not a great hunter,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think like the biggest thing is just hunt for yourself. Like
100%,
I think like you're going to have a lot more enjoyment about, whatever. And, I have a lot of deer that like might've been smaller score wise, but mean more. And I know it was like way more of a challenge than maybe a big buck that was in a easy area or what have you. Like it's just all, it's all personal. I mean,
yeah,
the sheep behind me, the whatever, like none of this means anything to anyone else other than me. Like when I'm gone to me, you're like, well, it's just me like, well, that was dad's ram, you know what I mean? But it doesn't matter. Like, I'm the one that has the memory of the hunt and what I went through and like how enjoyable the hunt was. So, I mean, just, make it fun for yourself. Like it's kind of the point of it.
Yeah, dude. And that's something that it's so cool to hear you say that, man. And, I tell everybody, like, create new challenges for yourself. Like that way, when you do kill an animal, it's like, oh, that was the year I decided to try and do this. Whether it be switching to a recurve or whether it be spotting and stalking, a whitetail, or whether it be trying to use a decoy. You've never used a decoy before, because now you've made that memory into more than just a trophy on the wall. You've made that memory into, oh, that was the year I tried to use a bow mounted decoy and I got it done. That's a cool story. Yeah. Speaking of bow mounted decoys, do you use them a lot?
No.
Do you use any decoys?
I haven't for a while. I used to use them. I haven't really used them very often lately. I mean, I think that they do work. I've had success with them in the past. Sometimes I find it more of just a pain than anything. Like, like I brought one, I had a desert sheep tag. My brother killed his desert sheep with one on his bow. I don't know if it helped him or hurt him, but I was surprised he made this shot because it was a little windy. He had like a bow mounted sheep decoy on his. I brought it on my I drew a desert sheep tag a couple years after him. I brought it. I didn't use it though, because it's more of a pain than I thought it was worth. But I think there probably would have been I probably should have used it at one point. I used to use like pronghorn decoys. Sometimes I'll bring them, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I like, every time I feel like I bring it, it messes me up. And then when I don't have it, I could have used it. So it's just like a catch-22.
Yeah. It's always like, man, if I'd had a decoy, I think that buck would have committed. And then it's like, if you do have a decoy, it's like, dude, that decoy blew this hunt.
100%. Yeah.
Have you ever seen that? Have you ever tried the hat decoys, ones that you just wear on your head?
Dude, I've tried it all. Yeah, I've tried it all. That never worked for me. And I felt like an idiot. But I've had friends that it's worked for. Yeah.
I think everybody, like if you see Frank Noska, like post a picture, you're like, what a goober. And then you're like, well, how do you argue with the success? I mean,
right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, but in some instances too, like you could probably wear it and still kill them and it not have been beneficial or it been beneficial. I don't know. I think that like, I definitely have used it. I don't know if I've killed anything with it on. There was a period of time where I used, it was like, hey, cool, let's try it. And it worked. Like sometimes you think it works, sometimes you think it doesn't, I don't know. I mean, I don't discredit their value. Like I've written a lot of articles about, the value of like elk decoys and pronghorn decoys. And I've definitely, they've been beneficial. Just like I probably haven't used one in 10 years, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. To me, I think the benefit fully is dependent on the situation. I mean, like we're talking about with elk. I mean, if you're in such a thick area and the bull's not going to see it until it's at 15 yards anyways, what good did it do? I mean,
no, there's hunts where like I might even have one in the vehicle or like, whatever. And there's definitely situations where I'm like, damn it, I wish I had a decoy.
Yeah.
And there's definitely situations like that. Or even just like, I mean, with pronghorn, like crossing into an open area, utilize those like cow ones, like a beef cow, to like cross an area or something like that. I used a moose decoy last year. I don't even remember what I've been doing. Yeah, I used a moose decoy last year and that worked pretty well.
Really? At least you think it did. You killed the moose.
I didn't kill a moose with a decoy though. But I did have one instance where it did help. It helped, but I was already stalking him, and then now the moose was going to the decoy. It's a long story, but it worked, but didn't, wasn't in the right context. Like I wasn't with the decoy when the moose shows. The moose was going the other way.
He left the decoy at his truck, and the decoy.
My brother had the decoy up. We were calling. The moose had like busted out and went on the other side. So I dropped down to stalk the moose. And then he saw the decoy and started going back to where my brother was, and I wasn't there. So it did work. I just wasn't there.
Gotcha.
But yeah. So
now my last question, as far as hunting big game, mule deer, elk, whatever, what's your number one tip on gear? Like, what do you think most dudes miss on their gear as far as hunting big game?
I mean, I've said this a lot, but like, I think the most probably beneficial to success piece of gear would be your optics for Western big game hunting. Yeah. I mean, I've said this like numerous times because I just think it's funny to say, but I was like, if I had to choose, I was like, well, you can either go out in your underwear and have optics or no optics and be fully clothed. I would just choose the optics and underwear because I know that I'd be able to find the animal and be successful. Like I actually feel naked going without my binoculars. And like so much of the success, 99% of the success, it relies on, but like good optics. The people that are really good at spotting, really good at like utilizing their binoculars are the ones that are continually successful. And like, if you can learn that like that technique and to use them, and like the better the optic, like the better, your comfort level and ability to spot stuff is. So like good optics are for Western big game hunting, like worth their weight in gold, really. But you have to use them. Like a lot of people have optics and they're in their backpack. They're on, like, they don't put them to their face. Yeah. I see it all the time. Like, yeah, you got binoculars, and they're like in their backpack. They're never glassing. Like I'm glassing. I probably look through my binos more than I do my naked eye. It's really like, they're always to my face.
Now, if optics are the single most important, what's your system? Like as far as spotter with binoculars, do you carry a smaller spotter, bigger binoculars? I mean, what's kind of your...
I mean, I have little bit of everything, and it depends on the hunt. Some hunts are more optics intensive, right? So like mule deer hunting, I think is very like more open country, optics intensive. Like I have binoculars on my chest. I probably have like a high power binocular, like an 18 power binocular in my backpack, and a large spotting scope. I'm like very optics heavy. On like a backcountry elk hunt, I probably just have my chest binoculars and potentially a light, like a small spotting scope or like a light spotting scope. Spring bear hunting, I like optics heavy, like generally go with like large binos so I can sit and glass more. And I always have a tripod. I also have like a way to put my chest binoculars on the tripod. So I might even just glass off that for like steady looking. But I always have probably bare minimum always have binoculars. Most 95% of the time I would have binoculars and a spotting scope. And then there's alternate times where I would have like high power binoculars and a spotting scope, or there's very few times, like maybe spring bear hunting would be one where I just don't have a spotting scope, but I don't know if that's the case. I probably would just take the extra weight. But I think if it's like that, where it's like, well, I don't necessarily have to, like, I'm still got to get closer, like, but I could use like an 18 power binocular, like, it's a bear or not a bear. Should, I guess. It's like the only thing that like looks like a bear out there. So I could probably just use like high power binoculars at that point.
My biggest tip when it comes to picking apart a mountain is slow down. Like, and if you think you're going slow enough, slow down. Like, look under every tree and every shadow. Like, I've seen so many dudes like will come up, on top of a hill, and they'll pull out their binos and look at this massive hillside for, 2.5 minutes and say, yeah, there's no bears here. And I'm like, dude, there's no way you looked at everything. Like, we're going to sit here for 2 hours and pick this hill apart. Like, so many dudes just, scan the hill and they think, well, if I didn't see a bear, there's no bears. Like, you got to look in every crack, crease, and crevice, behind every tree and every shadow. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. I mean, that's like, knowing where to look and when to look makes a big difference too, but yeah, I mean, optics are hugely important for Western big game hunting. I don't know if it's probably not really the same everywhere. Like if you're stationary and whatever, but, if you're just like sitting a tree stand and need something to come out at 30 yards, probably not as important. But for like spot and stock type hunting, you cannot stalk without the spot part. So you got to have like optics to make it efficient.
Yeah. I think the most, and I don't want to give a tip here, but I think the most under considered part of equipment is the broadhead. And that's, in my opinion, the single most important thing, because no matter what bow you're shooting, what camo you have, what boots you're wearing, what optics you got on your chest, at the end of the day, that's the first and sometimes the only thing that makes contact with the animal. And so many guys like worry about the bow they're shooting or the sights they're shooting or whatever, and they don't take time to make sure their broadheads are razor sharp. They don't even consider what head they're using. They just think, well, this is what I saw on TV. So this, I'm going into an elk hunt with a rage. Like, probably wouldn't. And they don't even consider what's on the tip of their arrow. And so I think, like, I just tell people, like, that's this, like, if I'm leaving on a hunt tomorrow, what I'm doing is sharpening broadheads. Like, I don't care I've been shooting the bow all summer. I know it's hitting right where it needs to hit. I'm going to be sharpening broadheads because I want to make sure if I get into a situation where I have the opportunity to shoot an animal, my broadhead is razor sharp and it's ready to make contact with that animal. And I will say this, I have, because of a podcast I listened to of yours, I'm a day 6 guy now, man. You've got me hooked.
Yeah. I'm like a day 6 lifer for sure, because like, switching to those arrows and broadheads like has changed the game for me in a way of like, I mean, you're absolutely right. Like, I shoot a fairly expensive broadhead, but I'm only planning on shooting one and I want that one to work. 'Cause like the cost of that failure is so big. It's like an elk tag, a hunt, days of work, whatever, once in a lifetime opportunity. You're absolutely right. Like, I want like my setup to have no potential for failure and like do penetration, like if I accidentally hit it in the shoulder or something, like I want to still kill that animal. I mean, I've tried everything. I probably shouldn't, but I was like, I always try to see if there's something else I like better or whatever. But, a couple of years ago, I had like a pretty bad failure with a mechanical, and I'll use like mechanical broadheads for things that I don't, it's hard to say, like, don't care, but like I'm hunting white-tailed does, or I'm hunting, you know what I mean? Something is like, it'll be fine. But like if I've got a tag that, mule deer tag, elk tag, sheep tag, like, dude, I'm making sure that when that arrow makes contact, it's going to do what it's supposed to do. That's all. I
actually remember you telling the story of that mechanical and you saying, man, Brian's going to be pissed.
Oh, for sure. Like, dude, why you had the, like, but I just, I was like, well, I had to, little bit of it. Like there was a backstory to like why, because I was going to get a new bow. I was going on a sheep hunt. I was going to, like there are mechanical broadheads that I enjoy using for certain hunts. I mean, but I don't think that every hunt is, suited for it personally. And I also think like, I put a lot of emphasis on tuning my bow too. So, everything should shoot the same. That was like, man, it was a good buck and good mule deer buck. And like, literally just like, maybe it's a 1 in 1,000 that did that, not on that mechanical, but I don't know. I've had him not work on other hunts too. So
yeah,
never know.
It is. So I'll tell you my kind of broadhead journey. I was on a bear hunt last spring and I shot a bear with my recurve and made a good shot, but just absolutely no blood whatsoever anywhere. Well, I was using a single bevel. And so it just literally makes a perfect slit through that bear. There's nothing to disrupt the cut of that bear. And so with how many fat layers there are and how many hide layers there are, moving back and forth, it clogs those holes. And so as soon as that hunt was over, I'm like, man, I gotta find something that'll disrupt the cut on an animal.
Yeah. And
so I started doing a deep dive on broadheads and found you and Brian talking about broadheads. And so I'm like, well, it's got bleeders, so it'll disrupt the cut. And I had bought into, and I don't want to say lie about single bevels because single bevels perform really well.
Yeah.
But I had bought into the hype of single bevel. I'll say that. And so hearing you guys talk about the benefits of a double bevel and just that whole podcast, I'm like, I'm going to give them a shot. And I have been nothing but pleased. Now, like you said, they're an expensive broadhead, and I wasted 3 of them on a whitetail this year, and I was so mad. The first thing that went through my head was like, yeah, I got the buck. And then the second thing was like, crap, I just wasted 3 heads. Like, dang it.
Yeah.
It sucked though, because it was what happened. I was in a plowed winter wheat field, and so I blew right through on the first shot, and it just buried into that mud. It was super muddy, and I mean that arrow could have literally been a foot deep in the mud. But he stopped again at 50, and I'm like, well, I might as well get another one in him.
Yeah.
And but I didn't have time to range, didn't have time to move my sight, and just shot right over his back, and that one buried into a tree.
Oh.
And then I actually get to him, and he was still bedded down and still alive, and so I shot him again, and wasted 3 heads, and I was frustrated to say the least.
Well, I guess you got the buck though. So.
Yeah, that's all that matters. But like you said, man, do I want to look back and say, dude, I just spent $100 on broadheads to kill this buck? Or do I want to look back and forever be remembered, I hit his shoulder with a mechanical and I wounded a deer and I didn't get the buck? You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's like, I don't know. I've just come to grips with like, I've had incredible success with it. It's hard. It's like, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And it's like, it's simple, but it works continually and allows you to take like, maybe a harder quartered shot than another type of broadhead or whatever and still be lethal and effective. I mean, I shot an elk pretty hard quartered this year. And like, you would think like it's quartered enough where people are like, that's a terrible shot. And like the elk just ran 20 yards and died in sight.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's
well, part of that too is just knowing your equipment. Like,
yeah.
I mean, you're like you said, we're hunting for us. Like I know my equipment, and so I know if I can take a shot or not. And that's why, especially when I made the switch to a recurve, and people are like, well, "What's your maximum distance?" And I'm like, if I see an animal and think to myself, I can hit and kill that animal, I'm shooting it. I don't say, well, if it's past 24 yards, I'm not shooting it. Depending on the situation, if a deer steps out, an elk steps out, a bear steps out, and I think I can kill that animal, I'm going to shoot it.
Yeah. That's I mean, I agree with that a lot. Like there's times where it's all situational, right? You could have an elk that's 15 yards and it's not a good shot or not. I don't think I'm going to kill it, but there's another time where it's 30, 40, whatever. And it's like, I know for a fact I can kill this elk. Like it's very situational. Yeah.
And it's so hard to understand. Again, like I have passed animals at 15 to shoot them at 40. But because of the situation, it's like I had a better shot at 40 than I did at 15. And that's why, like, on that elk that was at 13 yards screaming in my face, like, I did not have a good shot. Like I could have shot the animal and said I shot an elk, but I don't think I would have killed it. And that's why I didn't shoot it. Now, had he, taken 2 big bounds out and stopped at 30 and perfect broadside, I'd have let one rip, It was a great bull, but because of the situation, the elk's at 13 yards and I couldn't shoot it. So maximum distance, I hate it when people say, well, what's your maximum distance? Well, that's all situational.
Yeah.
I mean, because it could be 10 depending on what I'm doing,
Right. For sure. Oh, cool.
Remi, man, thank you so much for coming on. Guys, just so you know, on the Broadhead Breakdown, I was just talking with Brian at Western, and we did a Broadhead Breakdown a couple years back, basically right after I made the switch, and but it was on my older platform, and it was one of the single most listened to episodes ever because it was super informative. I think Brian's probably the wisest dude when it comes to heads.
Oh,
I'm just going to say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
The guy is brilliant.
And arrows too. I mean, he's forgotten more about arrows than I know about arrows. Everybody's so wrapped up in arrow this and all the science behind arrows. Like you need an arrow that flies good and does what it's supposed to.
Yeah.
Which one is that? Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. And so we're going to have Brian back on with
sweet.
a new platform and do a full Broadhead Breakdown covering everything. And here's what I like about Brian. Like he understands there's benefits of single bevels. There's benefits of this design, that design. He's just telling you the benefits and downfalls of all of them. And you can make your assessment off of there. Now, based off of my assessment of what he was saying, I went with day 6 and I've been incredibly pleased.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm in the same boat because I've like tried everything and I'm like, okay, it's the one that I just haven't had like everything worked out, every time you're like, cool. Okay. I'll just stick with that. That's great.
Yeah. I'm just going to keep shooting what's killing all the animals.
Yeah, that works.
It's not often that a new company comes along in the archery world and just absolutely changes the game. However, that is exactly what Dialed Archery did when they entered the scene. Pretty much took the archery world by storm, and for good reason. Now, if you followed me, my review of the Arxos. There was some things I didn't like about the Arxos. However, when the proof was introduced, here's what they did. They took all of the customer feedback. They took all the customer feedback so well that I believe with the proof, they have created a perfect sight. They listened to what the archery world wanted and needed out of a sight. And that's what they got with the proof. It is completely redesigned. It's completely in every way. It's just a better sight. They have improved on every issue that people had with the Arxos, and they have created, in my opinion, an absolute bomb-proof sight. Completely customizable on the website. Colors, pin configuration, pin sizes, pin colors. Completely customizable. You get exactly what you want right out of the box. Guys, I would highly encourage you to go check out Dialed Archery for your next sight. You are going to get, here's what I promise you are going to get more yardage out of a sight tape. Now, for a guy who's relatively on the short side of a draw length, that's pretty important to me. I shoot a heavier arrow and I don't have an incredibly long draw length. So that rail giving me a little bit more out of my sight tape is something that's very important to me. However, all of the other features of the proof make a bomb-proof sight. You can throw that thing around the mountain. You can drag it through the mud. It's going to perform every single time because Dialed has created, in my opinion, with the proof, the perfect sight. Go check out dialedarchery.com for your next and your last bow sight.
Right on, man. Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. A pleasure as always. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Y'all have a fantastic week.